Bob and Joe, two clueless tourists, landed in Gangtok. They were pumped, super pumped. They pictured majestic mountains and peaceful monasteries. What they got was pure craziness. "Told you we should have packed less," grumbled Joe, tripping over his suitcase. "Nonsense," chirped Bob. "An extra pair of shoes is a must for any occasion." They flagged down a taxi. The driver, a guy with a mischievous grin, pointed towards a beat-up car held together by dreams and duct tape. Adventure was calling. Their taxi ride was something else. Bumpy roads, crazy turns, a close call with a yak. Joe screamed, Bob laughed. "Did you see that, Joe? Almost yak burger?" Bob chuckled, patting a terrified Joe on the back. "I think I lost my appetite," Joe whimpered, clinging to his seat. The taxi screeched to a stop. They had reached their destination, a cute but chaotic little guest house perched on the side of a hill. Their room was at the very top. The climb was long, the stairs were steep. Bob, always the positive one, decided to race. Bad idea. "See you at the bottom!" Bob shouted, already halfway down, and then promptly tripped, tumbling down the rest of the stairs in a mess of arms, legs, and luggage. Joe, reaching the bottom a few minutes later, shook his head. "You all right, Bob?" he asked, trying and failing to hide a laugh. "Never better," Bob groaned, pulling a potted plant from his shirt. Their first meal was an adventure. The menu was in Tibetan. Bob, always resourceful, pointed randomly. Joe, not so much, braced himself. "What is this?" Joe asked, poking at the plate of brightly colored wobbly cubes with suspicion. "I'm not sure," said Bob. "But it's jiggling with joy." They ate. They regretted. Their stomachs rumbled in protest. Maybe sticking to familiar food was a good idea for future meals. Section 5, Noodle Mania and Spicy Surprises. Determined to have a real and, edible experience, they went into town. Street food was everywhere.
"These are amazing!"
Bob exclaimed between slurps, his face quickly turning red from the chili sauce.
"You might want to slow down."
Joe chuckled, watching as Bob accidentally launched a meatball onto a nearby table. Bob, clueless, continued his food frenzy, tears streaming down his face. It was a meal to remember, or maybe forget. Section 6, Monkey Business and Stolen Sunglasses. Next stop, the monastery. Monkeys were everywhere. One took a liking to Bob's sunglasses. Joe thought it was hilarious. Bob, not so much. "Bob, get this thing off me!" Bob shrieked, waving his arms like crazy as the monkey sat on his head, trying on his sunglasses. "Smile for the camera!" Joe laughed, snapping away with his phone. The monkey, happy with its new look, ran off, leaving Bob to chase after it, yelling threats in broken Tibetan. Section 7, Temple Mishaps and Unexpected Blessings. Inside the temple, it was peaceful. Bob, still mad about his sunglasses, tripped over a prayer wheel. The temple was a sanctuary of calm, with the soft hum of chanting in the background and the scent of incense wafting through the air. Bob, however, was too preoccupied with his missing sunglasses to notice the tranquility around him. His mind was racing, replaying the moment he lost them over and over again. He fell. It was surprisingly calming. As he stumbled, time seemed to slow down. The serene atmosphere of the temple contrasted sharply with the sudden chaos of his fall. The prayer wheels, which had been spinning gently, now seemed to spin in slow motion, reflecting the golden light of the candles. Bob's fall was almost graceful, as if the temple itself cushioned his descent. "Joe, well, that's one way to get in touch with your spiritual side." Joe's voice broke the silence, his tone light and teasing. The other visitors in the temple turned to look, some with concern, others with amusement. Joe's remark brought a ripple of laughter, easing the tension that had built up. It was a moment of unexpected humor in a place of solemnity. Joe remarked, watching as Bob's accidental tumble set off a chain reaction of spinning prayer wheels. The wheels, once still, now spun wildly, creating a mesmerizing pattern of motion and light. It was as if Bob's fall had breathed new life into the temple, setting off a cascade of movement that captivated everyone present. The sound of the wheels spinning filled the air, blending with the soft chanting and creating a symphony of serenity and chaos. Bob, surprisingly, didn't get up right away. He lay there, seemingly at peace, as if the fall had brought him a moment of clarity. The other visitors watched, unsure whether to help or to leave him be. Bob's stillness contrasted with the spinning wheels, creating a tableau of calm amidst the motion. He lay there, eyes closed, a peaceful smile on his face. It was as if he had found a moment of true tranquility, a rare and precious gift. The temple, with its ancient walls and timeless rituals, seemed to embrace him, offering solace and comfort. Bob's smile was a testament to the unexpected blessings that can come from even the most unlikely of mishaps. Maybe he had found enlightenment, or maybe he had just bonked his head. Either way, the moment was a reminder of the unpredictable nature of life and the unexpected ways in which we can find peace and clarity. The temple, with its serene atmosphere and ancient wisdom, had offered Bob a moment of stillness and reflection, a brief respite from the chaos of the outside world. And in that moment, he found a small piece of enlightenment, whether he realized it or not. Section 8. Reunited, relieved, and ready for a refund. Their trip was ending. After a whirlwind of adventures, mishaps, and unforgettable moments, Bob and Joe were finally at the airport, ready to head back home. The journey had been long and filled with unexpected twists and turns, but they had made it through together. Now, as they stood in the bustling terminal, they couldn't help but reflect on the past few days. At the airport, Bob found his missing sunglasses. It was a moment of both relief and frustration. He had been searching for them throughout the entire trip, convinced they were lost forever. The sunglasses had been a gift from his late grandfather, making them irreplaceable and deeply sentimental. They were in his backpack. All along, they had been nestled in a side pocket he rarely used. Bob couldn't believe his eyes when he saw them. He felt a mix of emotions, relief that they were safe, and frustration at himself for not checking the pocket earlier. He had been wearing his prescription glasses the whole time. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had been squinting in the bright sun, struggling to see clearly, all because he hadn't thought to check his backpack thoroughly. "Bob, you've got to be kidding me!" His voice was a mix of disbelief and amusement. He couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. It was just another chapter in the long list of unexpected events that had defined their trip. Bob groaned, burying his face in his hands. The frustration was palpable, but so was the relief. At least he had found them before they left. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of things. Joe, "Oh well, at least you got a good story out of it." Joe's voice was lighthearted, trying to lift Bob's spirits. He knew how much those sunglasses meant to his friend, and he was genuinely happy they had been found. Joe chuckled, patting him on the back. The camaraderie between them was evident. They had been through so much together, and this was just another story to add to their collection of shared memories. As their plane took off, they looked down at the shrinking landscape. Gangtok. Beautiful, crazy, unforgettable. They wouldn't recommend it. The city had been a whirlwind of experiences, some good, some bad, but all memorable. As they ascended into the sky, they couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The trip had been everything they had hoped for and more, and now it was time to return to their everyday lives, carrying with them the stories and lessons learned from their adventure. Section 9. Epilogue. Back to reality. Thankfully, back home, amidst the familiar comforts of their everyday lives, Bob and Joe told anyone who would listen about their disastrous trip. They had returned to their cozy neighborhood, where the streets were lined with familiar faces and the aroma of home-cooked meals wafted through the air. The trip had been a whirlwind of unexpected events, and now, in the safety of their homes, they could finally laugh about it. The stories, more exaggerated with each retelling, became legendary. Each time they recounted their adventure, new details seemed to emerge, making the tales even more outlandish and entertaining. Friends and family would gather around, eager to hear the latest version of the escapade. The living room would be filled with laughter as Bob and Joe took turns embellishing their narrative. And then the monkey, it just grabbed my sunglasses and... Bob would begin, his eyes wide with mock horror as he mimicked the monkey's antics. His audience would be in stitches, tears of laughter streaming down their faces. The monkey incident had become a staple of their storytelling sessions, a guaranteed crowd pleaser. Bob would begin, launching into his well-practiced routine. He had perfected the art of storytelling, using dramatic pauses and exaggerated gestures to keep everyone on the edge of their seats. His tales were a mix of humor and suspense, with just the right amount of embellishment to make them unforgettable. Joe, sipping his tea, would shake his head and smile. He was the quieter of the two, but his subtle interjections and dry humor added a perfect counterbalance to Bob's exuberance. Joe's role was to provide the occasional reality check, reminding everyone that, despite the hilarity, their adventure had been very real. They were back, safe and sound, and that's all that mattered. The trip had been a test of their friendship and their resilience, but they had come through it stronger and with a treasure trove of memories. The comfort of home had never felt so sweet, and the simple pleasures of everyday life were now cherished more than ever. Well, that and the fact that they had enough material for a lifetime of embarrassing stories. Their misadventures had become a source of endless amusement, not just for them, but for everyone who heard them. Bob and Joe knew that, no matter what the future held, they would always have these stories to look back on and laugh about. And in the end, that was the best souvenir they could have brought back from their journey.